This episode is sponsored by Covenant Eyes.
Dave Ramsey says credit cards are evil. Cut them up, throw them away, never look back. But is he right? Are credit cards the financial disaster he says they are? Or can they be used responsibly without wrecking your budget or conscience? Find out on this episode of The Catholic Money Show.
For those of you who are just tuning in and you're not familiar with Dave Ramsey's approach to credit cards and the strong stance that he takes, let us go ahead and just give you a summary of his perspective. So Dave Ramsey is 100% anti-credit card. I'd say that pretty much just sums it up
pretty well.
If you go to his website and you try to make a purchase, it's going to ask you, are you trying to use a credit card? Because if you are, go away. Use a debit card instead. At least at one point.
That's what he says at least. I've never tried it and tested it.
I'm pretty sure it would still work the same way.
I imagine if there's a way to know and to filter it out, he'd probably do it.
Oh yeah, he would.
If it's possible, he's doing it.
He's so staunchly anti-credit card. His belief is that there is no such thing as responsible credit card use, and the only thing he recommends you do with a credit card is put it between two blades of a scissor and chippity chop, chop, chop that thing up. We'll discuss if that is actually helpful or not. There's credit cards we've done that to, and there's credit cards we have not done that to, and we're going to explain both of the reasonings behind those things. But essentially, the main arguments that Dave would make is that credit cards are going to encourage overspending because they feel less real than cash, that there's a debt risk. People often don't pay their balances in full. Actually, quite a few people don't do that, leading to high interest debt cycles, and that's really hard to get away from and really hard to break free of. And then number 3, those psychological traps. The credit card companies are trying to lull you in, give you rewards, give you points, and they're trying to hook you in. But at the end of the day, they're going to make, house wins every time. They're only doing it just to get their tendrils a little bit more cinched into your own financial situation so they can graft money from you later, eventually when you slip up, and they can go ahead and make all their money back that you got in perks that you thought you got for free. It was all a lie, or it was all a joke.
That's right.
So that's the summary.
What he says, yes. So we're going to go through how we see credit cards and how we suggest maybe you see credit cards. And I think you will find that we agree with Dave more than you might think and less than you might think.
True.
Somehow that's going to be possible. Yes and no. I know there was a friend of ours who was big on credit cards and getting the points, and you do this one and that one, and everybody kind of knew us. And then they were like, you guys should have a debate. And at the end of the day, we both kind of have the same stance on the credit card, which we're going to get to later in this episode. But let's go to it, which is the main point here. And that maybe strikes right at the root, at the heart of what Dave is saying. But we believe that credit cards can be used responsibly.
We do. I think there can be some responsible ways to benefit from credit cards. And we personally have done this. Early on in our journey, we did have to cut up the credit cards. We were not using them responsibly. When we came into our marriage.
I was not using them responsibly.
If you are a person that is paying interest, if you're paying interest on a credit card, that is an immediate get the scissors out, cut it up, cancel it, delete it from your browser, call them and pause it before you close it. That is what you do. And we'll discuss that in depth a little more. For the people that are paying it off in full, right? You can benefit in some way from some of the rewards, from some of the points, from some of the perks. The way that the Texeras have primarily used the perks, we are by full knowledge here. I just want to let people know that we are not also advocating we don't put everything on a credit card to try to glean as much as you possibly can from the rewards, and we'll discuss why. But trip insurance, that's been the primary way the Texeras have used these over the years.
Yes.
And instead of paying, hundreds or thousands of dollars in trip insurance over the years, if we are going to be traveling, we will put it on a credit card. We've already budgeted for it, and we pay it off immediately. But it comes with that added bonus of the trip insurance, and that has come in handy for us many, 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 many times. whether it was when we were going to go over to France, but there were a bunch of terrorist attacks and it just wasn't safe anymore, and the government was saying don't go right now, and we got a full refund, to threatened hurricanes, etc. The trip insurance has always been something that was helpful for us. Again, we think that you can use them responsibly when you're not paying any interest. You're paying off the credit card balance in full every month, and you're only putting expenses on the credit card that you have previously budgeted for.
Yeah, you have the money for it. You could take the money out of your pocket or use your debit card, but instead you are choosing to put it onto the credit card for whatever reason, like Amanda was mentioning earlier, and then you will use that same money. Instead of giving it over to the guy at the register, you're just going to send it over as the payment on the credit card to pay the thing off. We're not advocating using a credit card to spread out the cost of something and pay a bunch of interest to make your purchases more expensive. We are not advocating that. That is not what I would call responsible credit card use.
Credit cards can also help you build a good credit score. And we're going to talk about that as well, because Dave will oftentimes say you don't need a credit score. But it does give you a little bit of a financial history, and it can give you a good credit score, and that does matter in some circumstances, and we are going to discuss that. Also, this was an interesting perk that I saw recently with our new bank when we switched to them. We are now getting high interest on our checking account, which
is nice.
That's never been heard of. It used to be just savings accounts.
Relatively high.
Right, but 4 or 5%, it's nothing to sneeze at in just your everyday checking.
Yes.
That's just sitting there. But it does come with, you just have to have 10 expenses on the credit card linked to the debit card through the bank any given month. And we just put our automated utilities, cell phone bill, and then we have it paid off every single month. But little rewards like that, yeah, you absolutely can benefit from that. You can use them. A credit card in and of itself is not inherently bad, but they demand disciplined use because the pitfalls can be quite large and quite problematic for people.
Yeah, I mean, there is a reason you've probably gotten mail in the last week saying that you've been pre-approved for like 8 credit cards. These companies make money through having credit cards. And one of the ways, or one of the reasons they're making a pile of bucks is because when we use a credit card, it feels different. So Dave is right here in that it can lead to overspending. There's piles of research here, but when we use a credit card...
Not as much as you'd want. But...
Yeah, well, there's been more and more.
Good.
When we use a credit card, it lights up the brain's reward center even before the purchase is complete. Just getting it out gets us excited. We're more likely to focus on the benefits of the thing instead of the cost of it. Because when we use cash, we're very aware of the cost of the item, and it lights up the pain centers in our brain. So we're thinking about pain and just aware of I'm losing something, the money, before I get to gain this item. And people are more likely just to spend more. Now, I will say, when I dive into all these studies, they say, oh, well, the average transaction is this versus that. I would imagine if it gets higher, right, like us, a trip is more expensive than the grocery store. So, and we have other reasons for put the trip on the card. Anyway, I'm just wondering if maybe there's something more than just, it's a credit card, so it's more expensive. Are they using a credit card because it's more expensive? I don't know. But study after study after study is showing something going on, saying that people use more money when they are spending on a credit card, or they're more likely to do an impulse buy than when they're using cash. There's all these little things that are coming up to increase the amount that you spend when you use a credit card.
Right. I think one study showed that it was up to 18% more if you're putting it on a card versus cash. And then years ago, this is something that credit card companies do not want studied. So they are going to suppress, like you wouldn't believe it. Big pharma, big credit card, they're all going to try to suppress anything, any statistic that would make them look bad, right? Even though we all inherently know there's something devious underneath at play. And really, people just need this information. And we're all adults and we can make decisions. Another study on, I think it was about concert tickets, showed that people or sports tickets would pay up to 100% more if they were putting it on a credit card versus a debit card or paying cash. So every layer we get away from cash, we risk spending more. Again, we're all adults though, and we should be free to make that decision. And again, if you know that, okay, your grocery budget, you have $900 that you've budgeted for that given month, it's up to you how you want to go ahead about spending that. If you are wanting to make the most out of it and be as efficient as possible, you're going to withdraw $900 in cash and have it in an envelope. Now, that comes with its own risks, and the Texeras aren't personally open to those risks of losing it or it getting taken by a kid or not having it in my purse and it got left in a different car or whatever. I'm not willing to pay that price, even though it would technically be the most efficient. The debit card, I might pay a little bit more, but it's just so highly convenient. Whereas if I am going to be putting it on the credit card and I know I'm going to be spending $10, $15, maybe $20 more total on any given week, but I accept that because I like the perks that come with it and I like the convenience of it, that's within my discretion to decide that maybe my budget for groceries isn't going to be so efficient as it possibly could be, but I'm okay with that and I'm accepting that. And that's part of responsible credit card use, is just knowing that every layer I get away, I am psychologically going to be willing to pay a little bit more, but I've accepted that risk as a whole.
Or just being aware of it, you can take some other steps to mitigate that risk.
Sure.
And just know, I'm going to be more tempted. I'm going to be much more likely to throw that thing in at the cash register. So, all right, when that comes up, I'm going to think about it. Do I really want it or not? And then make the decision.
And I found a way to mitigate that personally myself, is that as soon as if I'm at Costco, we have a Costco card. We really only have 2 cards, and one of them is a Costco card. As soon as I check out and I leave Costco, I go to YNAB where we do our budgeting, and I immediately put in the transaction that happened and I categorize it. So it's already taken away from the budget. It's already accounted for. So my budget is still in real time. Whereas the hard part with credit cards is that it could end up creating this tidal wave effect where you kind of feel like you didn't spend any money and your bank account still has $6,000 or $7,000 in it from all the paychecks. And you're just going on with your life, living a merry life. And then all of a sudden the credit card cycle closes and you owe $8,000 and it's like whoosh, this tidal wave. Whereas the way we personally use it is I track it in YNAB and then I send that money right away. I don't just wait until the end of the month.
Yes. There's a reason we advocate for responsible credit card use. There's a reason why Dave would say he would advocate for no credit card use, is that they can be tricky little things. They can be a little sticky for us in how we're spending our money. Now, another reason that Dave would say no credit cards ever is kind of a rebuttal of another point saying, well, a credit card can help you build a credit score, right? If you spend some money on it and you pay it off, well, then that is building up your credit score and showing that you can have some debt and you pay the debt back, which is very important to banks, that they get paid back for the money they lend out, and that will increase your credit score. Now, Dave will say, well, it doesn't really matter. You don't need a credit score. You don't need a credit score to buy a house or anything. They can do manual underwriting, or you can use a debit card to rent a car, or whatever else you might need. And so let's just take a look real quick at the credit score. So does a credit score really not matter? I don't think so. I would say it is good to have a good credit score. So it's true, yes, if you don't have debt and you're not paying on a credit card or any other debts after however many years, yes, you will cease to have a credit score. And in the meantime, it'll probably just start getting lower and lower until it then disappears.
So it feels really impractical to encourage people, and we found this in our own story, to not care about the credit score, because as soon as we were done paying off all of our student loans, obviously we had a really high credit score. And then we began saving up our emergency fund, and then we were immediately, right on the heels of that, ready to save up a down payment to buy a home. That's the first time when we ran into this needing to have a credit score, and it was there to determine the rate we were going to get for our mortgage. And as that time had gone on between paying off the debt and this moment, our credit score began to fall. And we realized that we were going to be paying a couple percent more in a mortgage rate, maybe a whole percent more, because our credit score was now falling. And we had to take proactive steps to actually restore it. We just got caught in a spot where it would have taken too long to go to zero, and the housing market at that time in Denver would have just washed away and run away from us. Yeah. And then it would have not taken as much time, a month or two, just to do a couple of things that we needed to do to improve it to get the absolute best mortgage interest rate on a 15% fixed rate conventional loan. Mm-hmm. So the Texeras obviously saw that the path really here was just to do a couple of things that did not require us taking on debt, to just tweak and improve the credit score so we could get the best interest rate for our mortgage.
Mm-hmm. And we've got a little guide to credit scores. What's the deal with credit scores, how they're calculated, why they matter, and how to improve yours. You can get that with the link below in the description of this video or in the show notes of the podcast.
Yeah. So credit scores aren't always the end-all, be-all. They're certainly not a descriptor of your financial responsibility, but they are kind of like checking the oil. If a mechanic's going to go in and pop the hood of your car and just check around for the health of a situation, it can be indicative. And it also is not just going to pop up when you are applying for a mortgage, because that's just, how many times do you do that in your life? Not all that many. It is going to be affected when you're applying for insurance as well. Car insurance, if you buy an RV, and you're getting insurance for that, it's just all of that whole world is also going to pull your credit score. There's a few other things as well. And again, it's just in your vested interest to have a positive credit score. And as far as the credit cards go, again, you do not need to be putting copious amounts of things on this credit card. You don't even have to be putting anything on the credit card, because part of the credit score is length of line of credit open. And so one of the ways that we benefited was, I think your dad added us onto
He put me on
a credit card that he
as an
had open for like
authorized
25
user
years.
when I was like a kid or something. Yeah, that was probably when I started driving or something. It was one of those like, well, here's a card if there's an emergency.
We never used it.
Which I don't even, after a little while, I didn't even know where the card was anymore. But I was still on the account. And yeah, he had opened it when I was like 6 or something. So I had an incredible length of credit. And he's one of those guys who's going to pay it off every month.
Oh yeah, he never did.
So that was helpful. If it was terrible at that, I probably don't want to be on that account.
No.
That'd be terrible.
But it goes to show that if you open a card, even if you don't use it, just keeping it open is going to, as time goes on, boost your credit score.
Yeah, so credit score is good. It's not the perfect descriptor, but banks, insurance companies, sometimes even landlords and companies looking to hire people think it's a good enough, easy one way to look at somebody and make a determination to help them filter out people. So it would be helpful if that number helps you.
Yes.
We are going to be back right after this and talk about the dark side of credit card rewards.
This episode's sponsor, Covenant Eyes, has played a really big role in establishing and maintaining freedom. And it's just gotten better over the years. I mean, I've been a customer, I don't even know what it is, 14 years, something like that, something crazy long. And I've seen their tools evolve over time. And they've gotten way more helpful over time. And then, and don't be writing in or nothing, proving me wrong on this, because I don't want to hear it. But certainly back in the day, there were ways around it. There were things you could do to fool it or to sneak something past it or whatever, because all it was doing is like looking at a URL or whatever. But as technology has increased, has improved, they've improved. And so now, they're looking at URLs. There's browser extensions so they can see even more of what's going on and what's getting loaded. They're looking, they got screen accountability. That's what I'm talking about now, man. Like, that is the game changer, because instead of just looking for what's the URL, what's the search term, etc., they're just taking a picture of the screen. So if you're seeing it, it can see it, and it does it like every, I don't know, like a minute or so. It's kind of it's random, so you don't really know. You can't. Okay, all right. It just took the picture. I'm gonna go now. Nope. You don't. You have no idea when it's doing it, but it's always doing it. And it does it on the computer. It does it on the phone, on Android, on iOS, and all that. It's every. It's only in certain things, certain apps. So I'm an Android guy. I mean, I really like I like Android. But it's also nice that it works on there better too. So, but it takes a picture, and if it senses that something is a little off, it lets your people know, and then they can check in and they can see what's going on. So it is awesome. It's super helpful, and if you're not using it as part of your like toolkit to fight pornography or any of that, like prevent it, to keep it out of your home or whatever, as part of your defense system, I think you should start using it. You can check it out. You can get a free trial using our code WalletWin30. It's a 30-day trial, or just go to walletwin.com/CE for Covenant Eyes, walletwin.com/CE, and that'll get you started there. But check it out. There's nothing to lose with the trial, but I think you're really going to love it. And here's something. Their new subscriptions cover, it's a ton. I think it's like a dozen or something sub accounts. And so and I forget how much it is a month. Maybe it's like $16 maybe? I don't know. But if that's a barrier to you, one, you can let them know. I think they might have a program. But two, split it with a buddy, because you got all these sub accounts. You just half the price. You want it even cheaper? Split it with 3 buddies. Now it's a quarter of the cost. And this is like, they're cool with it. It's not, it's not Netflix where they're going to start cracking down on it. Like, they want guys to be helped. So if this is a setup if that setup is going to be what it is that gets you the help, do it. All right. So walletwin.com/CE. No reason not to have this in your tool belt. walletwin.com/CE, or use the code WalletWin30 for your free 30-day trial.
Welcome back to the Catholic Money Show. In this episode, we are trying to answer the question, is Dave Ramsey wrong about credit cards? And now we're going to look at
the dark side
of credit card rewards. So there's perks. There's some great perks that can come with using a card. We talked about some of them earlier, and how even that might be a reason why you might want to use it sometimes. Of the travel insurance that's on some cards, of the price protection. If the price of the thing goes down in the next 90 days, you can get the difference back. Mm-hmm. Extended,
Rewards,
warranties, all sorts of other things. Yeah. Rewards, miles, points, all of
cash back, yeah.
Those are nice things, but we do need to think about how'd
they give it to us?
How they're paying for that. Because, that bank or company, whatever they are in the business of making money. And so by showering everybody with all these goodies, it costs them money, right? If they give 2% cash back, well, it's costing them 2%. How are they going to make up the money so they're still making money on everybody? Well, of course, they're charging interest. They're charging ridiculous interest, probably 20%, sometimes more.
Right, which qualifies as usury, which is immoral and unethical.
Mm-hmm. And for a while in the United States was illegal. That's why if you get a card in the mail, it's probably going to come from, I think, one of the Dakotas, because they were the first state to repeal their anti-usury laws. So they set up shop there so they could legally send out credit cards. So there's mountains of interest that they're making off of
disproportionately come from low-income individuals who are not paying off their balance every month. Or if they're not low income, they're at least in a pickle enough to not pay it off.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the money that's paying for my goodies, is it all just coming from people in a bad spot being taken advantage of?
Am I benefiting from somebody else's financial hardship? Maybe partly.
Some of it, yeah. Now, it's not the only way these companies are making money. They are what's called interchange fees. So every time a card is swiped or tapped or whatever the payment method might be, there's a fee that the
Company.
retailer, the store, whatever, pays. Now, more and more have been passing this on to the end user, the consumer. That's why you're paying that extra 3, 4, sometimes 5% when you use a card to pay at places, because they have to pay that much essentially to just run the payment. So if you're buying something for $100, they're only going to get maybe $97, $96 at the end of the day after the fees get eaten.
Yep.
And the biggest chunk of that fee goes to what's called the issuing bank. So the bank, the company that gave you that credit card, the Wells Fargo, the Citi, the Chase, whoever it might be, they get the biggest chunk of that fee. So even if you pay off all your expenses, all your charges at the end of the month in full, they've still made, depending on how it goes, 2.5, something like that % on everything. So once you think about, oh, if they got about 2.5 and they're paying me 2, they're still coming out a half ahead. And there are gazillions of credit card transactions every day. So even if it's a teeny little slice, it's a lot of little slices, and they add up to quite a large pie. So once you combine that with, sure, the money they're making elsewhere in the business, they have plenty of money to pay back and encourage people to use the cards and give the perks.
But that is a concern to consider.
Absolutely.
I think responsible users of credit cards have a responsibility to make known the fact that these high interest rates are not okay, and that they should be something battled, especially because they can really trap people. So again, it can be that both and. You can use it responsibly, but also call them out on things that they're doing that they should alter and change.
Yeah, it's just something to be aware of. I don't think it rules out use, though this is up to your own prudential judgment.
Right, your own
and
conscience.
the sensitivity of your conscience.
Absolutely. All right, so we're balancing a couple of views here, right? You know, where's Dave wrong? Where's Dave right? And where do we agree? Do we disagree? We've been talking about those things, so let's just kind of go over it again, just a little bit of an overview. So we do agree with Dave that most people do overspend on the credit cards.
Yes, makes it easier.
Oftentimes by, not even trying, right? Even if you're putting just budgeted for things on the credit cards, you're likely going to be spending more money. But most people that are using credit cards are not putting just budgeted for things on the credit cards. They're just putting whatever on the credit cards, or they're taking the credit card to Disney World and they're just swiping till the hogs come home because YOLO. And that's really not encouraged or something we recommend at all. And we completely agree with Dave on the point that most people are just way overspending on the credit cards.
Yeah, it can encourage an attitude of, we'll just spend the money and see what the damage is at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Instead of, here's the money that we are going to spend this month. We've planned it out in our budget, and this is how much we're planning to spend on each category, and then spending accordingly, whether it's in cash or card or whatever it might be. Two very different approaches, though it's a lot easier to kind of go wild and not pay attention when you're using a card.
Yep. There's also the fact that high interest credit card debt can ruin financial stability. It's a vicious cycle, and you mentioned getting caught in this back in the early days when we were just dating and engaged, where that tsunami effect, like I mentioned earlier, you're putting all the expenses on the credit card because money's running low, but then you're getting some paychecks that come in, but then by the time the tsunami has reached you and it's time to pay the credit card, now you go ahead and pay what you can, and it may not be enough.
Yes.
And then you get caught in this cycle, and then the next month maybe the tsunami is a little bit bigger.
I mean, this is how I got into trouble with credit cards. It was floating me to the next paycheck, and then I had less money after I paid the bill, and then eventually it was more than I could pay.
Yeah.
And I ran out of money, and then I started paying the sky-high interest.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's tough. All right, where do we disagree?
Well, we disagreed that you can, with some discipline, be responsible in using a credit card. and it can benefit you. Sure, like Dave says, the points aren't going to make you a millionaire or whatever, but they might do a couple little things for you along the way. And there's some benefits that can, when used responsibly, be nice to have, like we talked about earlier. So you don't need to avoid credit cards entirely. You just need to be aware of some of the dangers, some of the precautions that you need to take when using one.
Yeah, I've heard other people recommend that if you are going to have the credit cards, you should really only have two. The one you've had open the longest, and then your favorite one.
The one that has the best benefits for you.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
Exactly.
Sure.
There's no real reason, there are people, and we mentioned earlier, the friend who plays the credit card game. I think that those days have begun to shift a bit because millennials travel hacked, and point hacked, and they hacked so much that credit card companies had to start reining it in. But personally, that always sounded really stressful to me.
It's a lot to keep track of.
It's a lot to keep track of. The spreadsheets alone that those friends would have, and they treated it like a game, and it was almost like a hobby. The amount of time they had to put in. At the end of the day, I always sat and just calculated the amount of time I'd probably have to put in, the amount of mental weight that this would carry, and I would equate it to, 15 hours a month or something, and then I would look at what I could just earn if I worked in our business for that same amount of time, and I always came out way ahead. So to me, it just personally felt like something I never wanted to put any effort into. It needed to feel easy, and that's why we don't teach this as a strategy. We're never going to lead a class on how to get the most out of credit cards. It's not something that we're going to be preaching from the rooftops. It's more a super disciplined, cautious approach to credit cards if that's something that you would like to incorporate.
And this is what's so important to remember here, is that playing that game and doing this and that with all the different cards and hacking it together or whatever, that was what worked well for that friend of ours because of his personality and his interests and what he enjoyed doing with his time. Wouldn't work for us because we don't enjoy doing that with our time, and I would certainly forget all those details and mess something up and then lose out on whatever it was I was trying to get.
Which is what credit card companies are kind of banking on.
Yes,
they know that most people aren't going to be our friend.
Yes. So you need to know what will work best for you. If you know having that card, I'm going to spend more, or it's going to tie me in more to that particular store where I'm just going to go there all the time, even if it's not maybe the best deal or the best products or whatever it is. All right, maybe that's not going to work well for me. If you know that, I'm just out of control with my spending. I do a lot of impulse buying. I get ahead of me a little bit. Probably don't have a credit card. Or if you know, I'm very well disciplined with my budgeting. I spend what I have. I stick to my plans. All right, maybe a credit card here and there on certain purchases to have particular perks applied might be good, might be helpful. But either way, you need to know what's right for you, and you need to be honest with yourself, upfront and honest, 100%, with what's going to work or not work for you. It's okay if you're not the guy hacking together a free vacation to Fiji every year or whatever it might be. It's all right to do what's best for you when it comes to your money.
Right. And that's what makes personal finance personal. And why, as Catholics, most things aren't black and white. Most things are gray, and they're in that discernible window. Of course, there are certain things that are crystal clear, but so much of our life is lived in that layer of that zone of where we need to use discernment, and this is one of those.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, credit cards, they're basically a tool. They could warm your house or burn it down.
Yep. Just like fire. It depends how you use that tool and if you know what you're doing with it. So let us know in the comments, especially if you're watching on YouTube. What do you think? Are credit cards a helpful tool like we think, or are they just too risky to mess with at all, like Dave would say? Let us know. What do you think of what Dave says? Is Dave wrong about credit cards? What do you think? And if you are having trouble with credit cards or any other part of your finances, well, let's make sure that you know how to make those plans. We referred to a lot to budgeting today. Having that plan for your spending and being able to stick to it, however it is that you're paying for things. If you haven't been budgeting or you need a little update on your
Spruce up.
skills, head on over to CatholicBudgetGuide.com. Get our free Catholic Guide to Budgeting. That's CatholicBudgetGuide.com. And we'll fill you in on how to do it. It's actually pretty great.
It is.
Until next time.
Bye for now.